He's Metz. He's Tass. It's the Metzger Tassoul Show.
Hello, Mr. Tassoul.
Hello. I had to unmute my mic, Mike.
Very good. How are we doing
What's happening?
today?
Doing good. Doing good. Enjoying the warm weather. It's 84 yesterday.
You hear that?
84 in Wisco. It'll be 43 weekend, so it's not going to be here for a while.
So, was that a record?
I don't know.
You're
I didn't pay
boring
attention.
me.
Yeah, I know. I didn't really pay attention. I think they said the news this morning that we're set for a record day today as well. So, but I haven't been outside because I've been servicing clients all day.
In our schools, we're set for a record day today too.
Is that right?
That's right. Every day.
No, every day. Every day. I don't even want to know.
How about Mr. Arsamont? He's killing some legacies in his new location.
Oh, is he really? I didn't see that.
Had a 20K day in one day at his new location.
So you mean new people actually would buy the legacy program?
That's could be Kane Legacy. I'm sorry. Yeah, just legacy. Yeah, right. That's the rumor. That's the rumor, Tass.
It's great.
Thank you, Tass.
It's amazing what happens when you just ask.
It is amazing. And today, everybody, by the way, is anybody watching?
That's so cute. You're so cute with a little pink highlighter. Oh my God. Do you have another pen you can fidget with?
Nope.
Okay. All right. That's the one.
So anyway, hello, everybody. Today we're going to talk about retaining our black belts. I think it's a big issue in the industry. And if people don't think it's an issue, just think about how many black belts have you promoted since you've been in business, or if you've been an instructor, how many black belts have you promoted? And how many black belts do you currently have training? And what happened to all the black belts? Some of you may do great at retaining black belts. Some of you may. But as a whole in the industry, I think a lot of people struggle here. And we'll talk about some tips maybe to retain your black belts a little bit better.
It's great. Can't
So
wait to know.
Anyway.
Yeah. Hey. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I talked to two clients yesterday specifically that were asking about, wanting to know how to increase their retention for black belts. It's something that I know some schools do a really good job with as far as tracking how many black belts they've promoted. I just, because I wasn't involved in the business side of things early on, I just never did that where I had, I wish I would have known of every black belt that I ever produced, right. And created, so I could look back at that. But I started doing some math and I'm like, it's just tough, right? You start thinking, okay, 30 years, I probably promoted an average, in the early days of 4 or 5 a year. And then it was like maybe 10, 15 a year. But I'm thinking it's probably over 500 black belts. I'm thinking in 30 years, that's 10 a year. That's 300, right?
It's very possible. Yeah.
And that's in one location, but it could be 500 because there's some years that we promoted 30 people to black belt. It's just a tough deal.
And by the way, I know some schools have junior black belts, right?
Right.
So you want to count them, right? Because, how many black belts or junior black belts have you promoted in the lifetime of your business? And also, Tass, I think everyone will relate that a lot of people didn't keep those stats, right? So you got to come up with an average. How many do we think we promoted on average per year? And then you look at the number of people and where do these black belts go? And I think there's a couple things. Number one, we'll just dive in. And then we'll give some things to think about to retain these black belts longer, or to keep your students. But number one is the culture, right? I think early on, and I think schools today tout and have a culture of we are a black belt school, right? And I think students may get it in their heads that black belt somehow or in some way is the end or is the ultimate goal. My goal is to get my black belt in X martial arts. And when they attain that black belt, they may not consciously say, I'm going to quit now, but a lot of people say, I got my black belt, I want to take a little break. You know, I attained the black belt, I'm going to take a break. And then they never come back from the break, a lot of people, right? And then there's the question up there that was posted, you know, how many black belts do you think you promoted over the years? I'd love to see if you guys have an answer for that. And by the way, if you want to put that in there, if you want to put this in there, everybody, I'd be curious. How many black belts do you think you've promoted since the beginning of your business? And how many current active black belts do you have training? You know, it'd be interesting to just see. So anyway, I think number one is culture. What's your thoughts?
I agree. Agreed. I mean, I think, and I heard this from my Filipino instructor actually years ago, 25 years ago. And, you know, remember the big thing was you walk in the martial arts school and said, we are a black belt school, right? And he's like, I don't know why you guys are setting yourself up for failure. It was an interesting perspective. Like, I don't know why you're setting yourself up for failure. You wonder why everybody quits at black belt. Well, because you're a black belt school, they think that they've gotten to that goal. They think they've hit that goal. And then you saw some schools went, we're a black belt and beyond school. But it was an interesting perspective. Like, you know, what is that goal? And we all paint the picture, I think, of black belt in our students' minds, right? But then when they hit it, do they feel like they've done everything that you've asked them to do? So maybe we need to reshape what is that goal. Like, that's the first goal is black belt, but the ultimate goal is for you to become a third degree assistant instructor or whatever it may be, or whatever title you have or whatever it is. But it may be sometimes they feel like they've accomplished what we've asked them to do and what they kind of set out to do, which was to earn the rank of black belt. So I believe it is part of the culture. And I believe if you tell people, here's what the goal is, and now you change the goal on them, well, it's not really black belt. It's all about after black belt. So I think the message that you deliver over the course of, you know, their training, their tenure is black belt is that stepping stone. That's where the true learning begins. That's where you really start your training. So the goal should be for everyone to get to that level. But the real goal is you need to train as a black belt, because there's a difference between earning a black belt and being a black belt, right? There's a complete difference. And I think if it's in how you project it. So yeah, it's part of the culture, definitely.
So that's number one. And then I want to just put this up. So Mr. Rosenthal, if you have if you promoted 3 black belts in BJJ in a period of 24 years, we have another problem, right? We're not getting enough people to stay.
Or the Metzger BJJ program.
That's right. That's right. But that's another issue. Where are they dropping? Are they dropping it blue? Are they dropping it purple? Are they dropping it brown? And we got to fix that, which also brings us to, you know, how many retaining black belts. And that comes down to, well, number 2, not the only thing, right? Another part of this is your curriculum. When your students get a black belt in your school, I think this is very important. Does the curriculum just look more of the same that they've been getting all the way to black belt? Does it just seem to be just an extension of the same stuff I've been doing, number 1? And number 2, I think it's very important to have a black belt only class specifically just for black belts. When you are a student and you are an advanced belt and you eventually get to black belt, but you're still in the same advanced class that you were the last year, 2 years, or whatever it is, but now you just have a black belt and you're still kind of learning the same thing you've been learning, and maybe there's a little bit of an extra, you lose black belts. You're going to lose black belts there. So Tass, you want to comment on curriculum and a class, a specific class for black belt only?
Yeah, you know, because some of you may be a smaller school, right? And you may only have 3 black belts or 1 black belt, and you're like, well, does it really make sense to have a black belt only class? Well, there's some ways that you can 2-step that, right? Where you can bridge the gap, because you don't want to open 1 class or 2 classes a week that are black belt only classes for potentially 2 or 3 students, right? There's ways that you can work around that. You can maybe do a private lesson with them, or you do that, or you have a, we used to do, it was back in the old days when we use all the different terminology. We stole this from our Japanese stuff. We do a Yodansha workout, right? Yodansha is black belt. It was a once a month workout, right? And it could be once a quarter, it could be whatever, but you have to have something special for your black belts, so they're not feeling like they're just part of the same class and part of the same thing that they've been doing, all this time. Because it does, it definitely gets boring. And yes, I think there needs to be some different curriculum. And I'm not just saying that because I'm in the process right now of actually revamping some of our black belt curriculum. And I'm not going to get thrown stones in, the Taekwondo world, because in Taekwondo, you get a black belt, you learn 3 new forms, you make sure all your kicks are in play, and you get your second degree. Then you get second degree. At least this is the system of Taekwondo that I'm used to, right? You learn 3 more forms and you test for your next rank. So if someone doesn't really like forms, like they're okay, what am I going to do? Get better at my 360 jump round kick? I mean, yes, there's room for improvement, but if they're not learning something new or feeling empowered, it's just difficult. So because I've had the benefit of cross training, right? So I'm going to put some of those things in so they have experience and can start to see some of those things and get excited.
What? Yeah, by the way, it's also about the recognition. People love recognition. They love feeling different, looking different, as far as accomplishment. It's like the military. It's like rank, right? It's like some martial art organizations where they have masters or chief masters or senior masters, or, it's about recognition for all of the years you put in. And so black belts need to feel and look and have some prestige, I believe, right, in order to help keep them training after black belt. The other thing is, how consistently have they, since the day they joined martial arts, your student, how consistently have they had the ability to rank up, right? Whether you test or rank up every 3 months, every 6 months, every year, whatever it is, whatever that consistency is, you need to keep that at black belt. You need to keep them moving. Now, for example, let me just give an example. If there was a school out there that had a graduation or a testing every 3 months, every quarter, right? For example, if students were testing every quarter to black belt, and then from 1st degree black belt to 2nd degree black belt, it takes 2 years, let's say. So you get your black belt, and now all of a sudden those ranks or those stripes or those promotions stop now for 2 years, you're going to lose black belts. So one of the things that we've incorporated is the consistency of the ranking at black belt level. So what we will do is at black belt, they're going to have a consistent test to a black belt with a white stripe, a black belt with a yellow stripe, a black belt with a green stripe, until they get to their 2nd degree black belt. Now, what is a black belt with a white stripe and a green stripe and a blue stripe and a whatever stripe? Well, it's nothing. It's nothing except recognition that I've been a black belt for 18 months. This person got their black belt yesterday. Now we both look exactly the same. We're just black belts. But I have a little more experience, so I have a different kind of belt, and I've been promoting and still progressing, right? That is something that I think people should look at. It's not about getting to 2nd degree or 3rd degree or 5th degree faster. It's just putting in stops, consistent stops along the way to those 2nd degrees and 3rd degrees, so they continue to have a consistent progression in black belt. And I think that's going to help you retain. Go ahead, Tass.
I was just trying to pull up the visual, but I can't seem to get it to share the desktop here. But here, this is, long story short, like, that's what it is, right? So,
black belt ranks, right? Exactly right. What is that? White, yellow, orange, green, blue. purple, red, brown, and then you get your second degree.
Right.
Right.
So we do that, and then we have another whole system for second to third.
Which is 3 years in between, right?
3 years, right.
Right. Second degree to third degree for you is 3 years in between, but you can't cease.
Correct. And let me tell you what we used to do, right? We used to have the old school. Did you do preliminary tests at black belt? Do you remember preliminary tests, prelims? I don't know if you guys call them that or not, but it was basically, it was like every 6 months you'd do a test. You'd have 3 prelims where you guess what you did? Form 1 for prelim 1, form 2 for prelim 2, form 3 for prelim 3, and then that fourth 6 month block was your 24th month. That was your second degree test, right? And then your prelims got spaced out, but there was zero recognition at your prelims. You got zero recognition for it, right? And so what did we do? Well, we took the baggage that we had. We started to do the same thing at our martial arts school. And then parents even were asking, like, well, why are we paying for and now I'm going to get into testing fees, but why are we paying for testing? Or if you don't charge, well, why are they testing? Because there doesn't seem to be any reward for what they're doing. Well, it's just part of the process, and they need to do these 3 prelims, so then they're eligible. So there's not, they go from the system of where they're being rewarded 2, 3, 4, whatever you guys do for your promotions, to all of a sudden that just shuts off, and goes twice the amount of time, and there's no like physical thing. Now I remember, because I stole this idea from you guys, right? And I remember putting it in play, and I'm like, I can't stand how it looks. I'm just an old school guy, and I don't like having black belts with all of these different colors on the floor. But this is where you have to separate from yourself. Like, I don't like the way it looks. Personally, I just don't like the way it looks. Do we do it in our school? 100%. But guess what? Our retention has skyrocketed for our black belts. And that's really, at the end of the day, all that matters to me is it worked. It did what it was supposed to do. So whether that's a belt, a patch, whatever it is for you, a stripe, a chevron, it doesn't matter. But figure out a way that you can reward them, because all of a sudden they get to black belt and they fall off this cliff because they're used to, in this example, promoting every 3 months. And now they get to black belt, and that just doesn't exist anymore. That's the big reason people can fall off.
And by the way, we say promoted. It's really about recognition. It's about recognizing, right? We people like to be recognized for the work they're putting in, and especially if you work with kids, when it ceases, we have a drop off. Now, here's a big nugget for everybody. I'll tell everybody this. I think this is something we really thought about, and it's our black belt test, right? So when people test for black belt, when they finally get their black belt, this we implemented a few years back. I said we got to do something that's going to make them excited about coming back next week for their classes as a black belt, right? So number one, when they finally pass their black belt test, they get a training black belt, which is just your black belt. They get an embroidered black belt with their name on it, okay, embroidered. They get their black belt t-shirt now, which you can't buy. The only way you can get one of those shirts is by getting your black belt. They're not for sales. But the day you get your black belt, you also get your black belt t-shirt. The other thing that they get is they get a high quality Muay Thai pad, like very thick, expensive Muay Thai pad, because in our school, we're not a Muay Thai school, but black belts will start learning some Muay Thai techniques at black belt level, something they've never gotten before. Now they leave with this Muay Thai pad and they get their black belt certificate. So when they leave our black belt test, they're walking out of there with a lot of stuff, with this big pad, and we pre-framed them. Now that you're black belts, we can't wait to see you. Let's go back to point one, in your black belt only class, where you are now going to start training at a higher level of martial arts, or at a different level of martial arts. It's not like we downplay what we've taught, but we're going to take things to another level. Now they're all excited about bringing their Muay Thai pad to say, what are we going to do? How does this work? And it's a whole new experience for them. But in 3 months from now, and by the way, in our school, if you're consistent, it probably takes about 4 years to get to a black belt. If you're consistent, it probably takes about 4 years, okay? because there's quarterly tests at beginner and intermediate, and then it gets a little longer between the intermediate and advanced belt. There's a 6-month deal there, and there's a minimum of a 6-month testing process for black, so about 4 years or so. But once they get a black belt and they get into their classes, in 3 months, they're going to test on phase 1 black belt again, where it's still just a first degree black belt or a regular black belt, but they get that stripe. So now they have this progression. And now they want to get ranked up as a black belt until it takes 2 years to go from first to second. And then in 2 years, that's when they can actually come and test for second degree black belt. But it's a different experience. And again, reverse engineer what you all want to do. As martial arts instructors, what is it you're trying to do? And you're going to probably say, I want to make the best martial artist I can. Well, you can't make great martial artists if they're quitting. So you could only make great martial artists if they continue training. So you first have to ask yourself, well, what is the best way to keep my students? What's the best way to keep them training? And you got to come up with answers there. Then about your curriculum and everything else and the way you structure your class will determine whether you make great martial artists or not. But I don't care if you're the best teacher on the planet. If they're not coming to class, you can't train them to be the best. So real quick.
Yeah, Mr. McGraw. So this, your black belts, right? Your OB, as you call the belt, right? This is for all ages for us, right? So if they're a black belt, if they're 12 or if they're 52, they're going through this belt system, black belt system, because it doesn't matter if they're 12 or 52. Everybody wants recognition. So that's what we do it for.
Right. And do you charge for black belt only classes on top of the regular training package? No, we do not. No. That's just their class. Just like a beginner would come to their beginner class, an intermediate would come to their class, advanced would come to their class, black belts come to their class. Now, black belts can also do the advanced class if they'd like, but we have a special 1 or 2 days a week black belt only classes. You can't be in the class unless you're a black belt.
Right.
Since we've implemented this, like you said, Tass, our retention on black belts has gone through the roof. It's skyrocketed. We have a large portion of black belts now that are training, and we have 8 schools right now here in Orlando. Not 9 opening in July. So it's different at all the schools as far as how many black belts, but we have hundreds of black belts training between the schools, hundreds. And it's because of this. I mean, I take my daughter who's in the advanced class, the adult class, my older daughter, and the class right before that is a black belt only class. It is packed in that class, packed, you know? So these are ways you can retain your black belts. We gave you three tips there. What else we got to help retain black belts?
You know, I think just on the recognition side, we say recognition, and you talk about testings and promotion. You said it's really recognition. So what other things are you having to, like, I remember when I was a kid that whenever we would, now this was an old school quote unquote testing where we'd all come in on a Saturday, we'd all sit down, the white belts would go first, then they would sit down, then the yellow stripes would go next, and then the yellow belts, but they would have the black belts all lined up and they would all be watching the test and, you know, and helping out with the test and participating. It was a way. And you had the judges table up front, and then all of the black belt instructors, or all the black belts, excuse me, not even instructors, were all lined up. And they were basically all either at ease or standing attention for the 4 or 5 or 6 hours for the test. I don't recommend doing that. But it was showcasing that they were there and they were helping. But you could just see the way that they were standing, like they stood there, that they were proud just to be there. So that could be, maybe you have them come in and sit on the testing panel with you and help out with color belt tests and give them a task to do or give them something to do. But anything that you can do to help them where they're feeling recognized, and that does not mean have them come and help and assist in 6 classes a week because that they're a black belt and they should do that for you, because that's not the right thing to do. But to recognize them and showcase them, I think is the biggest thing.
Here's another tip, everybody. Anytime you have students getting ready to go to black belt, like I said, for us, it's a minimum 6-month deal. We only do 2 black belt tests a year. So it depends on when you get to the belt right before black. It could be 9 months before you test for black belt, but once you have a group of students or student or however you do it that is on their final phase to black belt, meaning they just got the belt before black, you need to have a black belt orientation meeting, right? Where you talk about what it means to be a black belt. And here's the point of this too. There's two things that we do. Second thing is, once you get your black belt, you need to choose a path, right? Do you want to just continue training to be the best martial artist you can? Do you want to go down the instructor path and learn how to be an instructor? Do you want to go and focus more on the competition side of martial arts? Where do you want to go once you get that black belt? That's one part. But the next part that we do is, depending on how you set up your school, right? I don't care if, some of you have 10-year-old junior black belts or black belts, right? Or 12-year-olds, right? Doesn't matter if they're 12 or 50. The parent, if it's a child, they need to be in this meeting. And we also show them the opportunities and the doors that open up once they get that black belt and what this means as far as a career option for us. Look, it's not just about now that you're a black belt, you just train. It's about setting an example. And if you want an opportunity to make this a career, that black belt is what unlocks this opportunity. It's not a gimme, it's not a guarantee, but it can't happen unless you get that black belt. Now that you're going to a black belt, we show them what we call our pathway to success and how you can make a career in the martial arts. And the reason why I say, because people don't know that. Some of you watching this probably have no idea. Your students definitely don't have an idea, right? But we will share with the parents if it's a child, because then the parent now looks at this as a possible investment, especially if it's a child, right? 13-year-old who's not working yet. But if they stay at the time they turn 15 or 16, this is a job opportunity for them. But we show them that there's health benefits, there's a salary path, there's a retirement plan, there's vacation package, and we talk about all the values and benefits of the lives that you can change doing something you absolutely love. And we paint this picture of a career opportunity also as once you become a black belt, right? So these are things that you should really look at. However, you can't do that. Now we're getting into the business side, right? You can't sit down and tell people that if you can't afford to hire people. You also can't really motivate somebody and show them, hey, you can open doors to be making $12 an hour, right? That doesn't motivate anybody. Maybe a 14-year-old or something, but we show the vision casting of the hierarchy and the corporate ladder here and what that's unlocking for them, which I also believe aids to retaining our black belts.
It's like anything, guys, right? So we're talking like this is different than having a conversation about just retention in general, right? Or attrition. Because the reality is this. There's two parts to this. Number one, if you look at your attrition rate, right? If you consider your entire attrition, right? There's a lot of people that quit on the front side, and then there's a lot of people that quit on the back side or black belt, right? Very few people in comparison quit within the middle ranks if you were to actually go through and look at all your stuff. So why are we specifically talking about black belts? Well, because black belts can lead to a great future for them and for you, by the way. If you can retain them and keep them, you can grow, because we all know the hardest person to get into our school is another instructor because of the skill sets that are required. But there's certain things that you do to be proactive, and there's certain things that we do that are reactive, right? So when somebody earns their black belt and then for the first time explain to them the importance of train after black belt, that's reacting as opposed to being proactive. When they're going to sit down, they have a meeting before their black belt test to share with them the experience and share with them the possibilities and the doors that are open for them, right? Having these mini, if you will, stump speeches about, what black belt, what's possible at black belt. Why should they train after black belt? So all along, you need to trickle in the benefits of training. One of the things that I, when I was on the floor, typically what I would do is I would I would talk about the Disney experience. You probably heard me say this before, Metz, but basically I'd say, look, here's the deal. Your parents are going to take you to Disney World. Isn't that exciting? So here's what we're going to do. This is when we're going. We're going this date. All right, guys, we got to get packed. All right, everyone get your luggage packed. Bring your luggage to the car. Put it in the car. All right, now we get to the airport. We got to unpack it. We got to bring it to the airport counter. All right, now let's check in. Let's get in the plane. Let's fly. Now we get there. We got to get the Uber. We go to the hotel. We got to unpack all the luggage. We got to put the stuff in the room. Next day, finally, all right, finally it's here. We get to go to Disney. And your parents pull up and you pull up to Disney World and you're at the front gates and they say to you, well, kids, here it is. Now let's go home. And you never walk into Disney. You didn't get to experience Disney, right? You did all this stuff to go there, to get there, to see it, and then turn around and go home. Well, that's kind of like going to black belt. You go through this, white belt town and yellow belt town and orange belt town, and then you finally earn black belt and you're done. You didn't experience being a black belt, right? And so that's an example of a story that I use to try and get them to think about the importance of continuing. What is that experience beyond? And I use Disney as an example because I really believe training is a lot more fun when you get your black belt because you're just moving a lot better and things come a lot easier to you as well. But that's a story some of you may want to inject. But all along, you have to be planting seeds about the continuing education so that people see the value, see the benefit, and we're being proactive as opposed to why are all my black belts leaving and I'm trying to save them as they're leaving. You got to set that culture, which you said earlier in the beginning, and make sure that it's on purpose and it's not just implied and that we think, well, everybody must know about it, because the reality is most people don't know about most things in your martial arts school. I don't care how many announcements you've made. And here's an example. If you tell everyone school is closed next week because of Memorial Day weekend or whenever that comes up, and you have classes on Monday and you're going to be closed, I guarantee you're going to have people show up at your door for class on Monday. It's just inevitable. And you're like, how could they possibly show up? We've emailed, we've Facebooked, we did this, 16 points of communication, and they still show up. That's how I know not everybody knows what the benefits are of training after black belt. So just be mindful of it. And I think if you can put it in along the way and start to create that culture, you're going to keep black belts for a longer period of time.
Mr. Curry here, do you have examples of a black belt only cultural experience program, trips to Japan, Korea, locally offered language courses, etc., to expand black belt knowledge? Go ahead, Tab.
I do. My mom, this is horrible. My mom prepaid for a trip for me to go to Korea with my martial art instructor when I was like 14. First of all, I don't know why she would send me overseas when I'm 14 years old with my instructor. There was obviously a lot of trust. But that all changed when he took the money and we never went on the trip. So I do have experience with not going to Korea, but being signed up to go to Korea. I do know schools that do that, right? In being serious, I do know schools that do that. It just depends on if that's what you want your culture to be. That's great, right? And I'm not knocking or banging anybody, but you remember the days when you used to shake hands like this with your hand underneath your arm? Like, I just outgrew that. Like, I'm like, this is just, in our culture, it's just weird. And people don't know what you're doing. And I'm not saying that to everybody watching, but it's just a choice that we made. We stopped counting in Korean. We were doing that for years, right? We stopped doing it. Now, it doesn't mean it's right or it's wrong. I have no problem with people doing their martial arts. When I did Danzuru Jiu-Jitsu, it was all in Japanese. Everything we did was Japanese. So I grew up in that. I did it. I performed it. It was great. But I just made a choice in our schools. That's just something that we weren't going to do, because I just believe sometimes we put obstacles in the way of our success. Sure. And that's the reason why it was a business decision. It was not about, is it right or is it wrong?
And Mr. Curry, here's the thing. Listen, everybody watching this, you got to start with the end in mind. At the end of the day, it's very simple. We want to keep students training in martial arts. Why? Well, because we believe in martial arts. We believe it's good for you. We believe it's good physically, mentally, spiritually, whatever. It's good for you. Now, what do I have to do to accomplish that? Do I have to take them to Japan, Korea? Do I have to? No, you don't have to go to those lengths. Is it going to hurt? No. Is it going to help for the people that can afford to do that and do that? Yeah, I think it's going to be an unbelievable experience and it'll be great. but it's not a necessity for what I really want to accomplish by just keeping my students. It comes down to your curriculum is the experience, right? And you as the chief or head instructor, learning things to then pass on to your students that may not be part of your core curriculum. For example, if your core curriculum is Taekwondo, but you have been learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on the side a little bit, you can just start putting it into the Taekwondo and testing your students on it, but you no longer teach Taekwondo. You teach your own style, basically, right? What we'll do is we stick with our core, and then any other knowledge we have, we'll add it on to get elements of that, but we may save that for black belts, or we may save that for a higher level program. We'll never water down our core curriculum program. When a parent or a student or a person comes into our school and they pay to enroll into our school to learn the martial art that is our core competency, we are going to give them 110% of that core competency. But it doesn't mean I got to start teaching them every single thing that I learn as a martial artist. You can do that. But again, your core competency should be good enough to get them to black belt. Now save some of that other stuff at black belt level to keep them engaged forever, right? And to keep training on and on and on. So
and to that point too, Metz, I mean, it's similar but different, like, not a cultural experience, but a recognition thing. I also remember when I was a kid, couple things that would happen. Number one, I think this has kind of gone by the wayside, but number one would be your embroidered black belt would be up on the wall when you join black belt club in this example, right? It would be up on the wall there waiting for you. Well, I think, instructors have kind of gotten away from that because of the attrition rate. Number one, it does cost money to put that up. And then I know people are flipping the belts over and putting different names on it. And then by the time they get there, it's not the right size. So that idea was a great maybe idea, but it just didn't pan out as well as people thought it would. But I also remember back in the day when we got our black belt, we would have our picture taken, and it was very clean. It was all on a I'm big on like frames on walls and all those things, but it was very organized. So nothing was shifted, right? It was all like on one ledge. So all the black belts. So you looked along the school and you'd have all the pictures of all the black belts were up on that wall. And I remember, because that was at the Green, I was part of 9 different schools. And so when I went to the Green Bay location, I would always look and my picture was up there, right? So for me at that time, that meant something, but everything might mean, all these things may mean different things to different people. Some people may not care if there are pictures on the wall. Modern day version is you might have a picture of your black belts on your website or in your Facebook page or your members only app area or whatever it may be. But what are the ways that just really get creative on how can we recognize our black belts in our school? I know Mr. Jason Flame, he has a whole black belt like Hall of Fame, right? So they've got a board where everybody's listed on the board, which the date that they got their rank, and it's a huge board that he's been doing for years. I mean, so there's lots of ways to do it, lots of ways to create recognition and culture.
Exactly. I mean, there you go. I mean, that I think there's some good tips there on how to retain your black belts better. And at the end of the day, guys, anything that you decide to do, you ask yourself this question: is this going to help me retain more or hurt me?
Right.
That's it. It's either going to help or hurt. If you think it's going to help, implement it. If it doesn't take a lot more work on you or your team's part, number one. Number two, also, if it's something you can stay with forever, because once you start implementing something, it's very difficult to take that away. So you just want to be mindful. Like, for example, if you say you're going to do trips to Korea with all new black belts, and I know you're not saying that, but I'm giving an example. Well, then you should do that forever, because when I hear about that and I see that and I get my black belt and I'm like, sir, when's the Korean trip? And you're like, oh, we're not doing that now. I'm disappointed now, right? And by the way, I can bring it down to as basic as when you do a graduation or regular testing for any belt level, having pizza and a big pizza party, right? Which is something that a lot of schools did. And I said, why do I need to do that? Like, and you might say celebrate. Well, my celebration's in the graduation. We make that the celebration. I just don't think I need to order pizza every time, bring the team here, clean up the school, have drink. Like, because if you start that, it's very hard to now just take that away, right?
100%. And this is not a comment to Mr. Rodney Bolt, because I don't know what your experience is and how many students you have and all the things. But I will say, on the flip side, we should not be proud. And I'm not saying this because his thing is out here, by the way.
Here, wait, hold on. Let me do
Take
this.
that off, right? But I remember this years ago, and it made a lot of sense. Like, why is it that martial arts school owners and instructors have this pride thing about, well, I've only promoted 10 black belts and I've had over 300 students. I don't know if you're bragging or if you're complaining. Like, because if you go to Harvard, one of the most prestigious colleges in the country, and they only graduate 4 out of 100 people, there's a problem with the education system and the professors, right? It's not with the students. So our courses and our programs, I don't think, need to be more stringent than Harvard. So I think you need to go back and inspect kind of the curriculum and the progression and your retention, and let's get people to that next level and get them higher, and understand that, black belt's a metaphor for personal excellence. It's not about being a McDojo. It's not about any of those things. It's about, can you get someone from where they are and what it is they're trying to accomplish? Can you be the reason that they're doing what they're doing to get whatever result that they want? And can you achieve that result and get them there? That's really what black belt is.
I need the disclaimer that the opinions and suggestions by Mr. Shane Tassoul do not represent the opinions of MAIA. No, I agree 100%. I agree. And we have those people, like, that's some kind of badge of honor that you've only graduated 2 black belts in 20 years. That when you tell people that, most people will think, what's the problem? Why? Right. And then maybe you think it's cool that it's just so difficult, but that's exactly right. The most prestigious college in the world, Harvard, which people would say maybe a very difficult school, even strive to get people through it. And they excel their education and their motivational teachings to make sure they have a higher percentage of people that can get through it. If you have something that the majority of people can't complete, I mean,
right.
Hell, I think the Navy SEALs graduate more people than some of the martial arts schools. You know what I mean? In our industry.
That's true.
It's crazy. And Miss Stephanie Bunch, do your tuition rates change when a student becomes a black belt? No, they do not. They do not change.
And by the way, some of you may be thinking, do the prices go up because they have black belt? But I know a lot of people that they lower their price when they become a black belt. And I don't think either one of those is the right thing to do.
By the way, I've done both.
Right, me too.
And within the 30 years of working, if we lowered rates, why did we? If you want to be honest with yourself, everybody, you lowered rates because you wanted to try to give them. That's the reason they're going to continue training. Right. Or get them to black belt. By the way, when you get to black belt, your rate drops to this. That was your way of trying to buy retention. That's not going to get you retention. Your curriculum, your teaching, your rapport, your customer service, that's what's going to get you to retain your students, right?
We did $200 a month was our leadership program at the time. And at the end of 36 months, it was a guaranteed renewal dues of $50 a month, right? So that's what we would do. And then this is back when I was, working with other companies and whatever. And so then,
which companies?
Yeah, we won't talk about that. Then the renewal was, well, it's $50 a month. So now someone wants to renew. They're like, well, I get it's $50 a month, but it's a 3-year renewal. So it's $1,800 to renew. So they wouldn't just pay $50 a month for their guaranteed renewal dues. They actually had to pay in full for 3 years, which is part of the reason I never felt good about doing business that way. Now, look, I could have made the choice, but I just didn't feel good about doing that. And if you ask me how many of those people are around today, the answer is nobody. And our retention in black belts was not nearly as good, or students, because of guaranteed renewal dues on the end. And now we're charging full freight for our programs. There is no lesser rate or higher rate. It is whatever program they're on. That's what they pay, and they continue to pay even when they move into first, second, third degree black belt. And our retention is at an all-time high for black belts.
Right. And Mr. Bull, yes, we wanted to know how many black belts has anyone on here promoted from the beginning of their business to today. And by the way, if it's a little, we would say, well, why is it? And yours, there's nothing wrong with yours. I mean, if you've been in business 10 years, it probably took 3 to 5 years before you even started promoting. So you really probably promoted 24 black belts in 15 years, right? Or I'm sorry, in 7 years or 5 years, right? It just
depends.
depends.
A club and there's not a lot of people. So yeah, that's why I wanted to pre-frame. It just reminded me that not because of him, but it reminded me of what and how some people think. That's all. That sparked my mind.
And here's the other thing that we got to remember. If you are on here, if you have chose the profession of a martial artist, you have to remember you are the exception, right? A lot of us are just martial artists at our core. And Tass made a joke earlier. Like I started my martial arts in 1983, 84, 83, 84. I started martial arts. I've studied many different styles because I've moved around with my parents all over the country. And I just wanted to find a good martial arts school. I can care less what style it was, as long as it was a good school, good martial arts school. And it took me 8.5 years to get to a black belt in Taekwondo. Okay, 8.5 years. Because when I would move, I'd have to relearn, even if it was another Taekwondo school, I would just, I just got there, but I was in places for 6 months sometimes in states, and then I moved. But I just loved martial arts. I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu back in 1995, everybody. I went on the first Gracie cruise with Horian and Hoist Gracie at a Torrance out of California. Me and my buddy, who actually is on here, Chris Clark, he was with me. I called him up. It was 1996, I believe. I saw it it might have been a black belt magazine or something. There was an ad, the Gracie cruise. We were training in jiu-jitsu, right? Or what we thought was jiu-jitsu. And we flew to California, went on the Gracie cruise with Horian Hoist and a bunch of other people. It was 24 hours of training over the 3 days, so like 8 hours a day. Came back, had a gentleman from the Carlson Gracie Academy. His instructor was from under Carlson Gracie, and then this was a student of him. His name was Carlos Enrique, student of his, and started doing jiu-jitsu back in the mid-90s. Well, I just got my brown belt in December of last year. Now, I had taken some breaks, and then I did some no-gi stuff, but it didn't matter to me. And the problem is if I reflected that onto my students, which when I started teaching, I did, meaning I was a little bit more hardcore. It was like,
there were no scheduled graduations.
There was no scheduled graduation. If you were a green belt, you were not going to test till I thought you were ready. And I'll let you know. And you might be a green belt for 9 months. And when I had maybe 10 or 12 or 15 people that were ready at any rank, I'd say testing is next Friday. And it would be a 3-hour thing. I wanted to see every single form, every combination, every self-defense technique. And I'd sit there, but my retention was horrible. It was horrible. So we had to systemize this somehow. Now, I will be honest with everybody. I will be honest. Was my green belt 30 years ago better as a whole? There's exceptions. Better than my green belts today? Yes, they were. Yes, they were. My green belts then were better than my green belts now. But now ask me the question. Are my black belts back then better than my black belts now? Well, the ones who made it to black belt, for example, 4 out of 100 people may have made it to black belt. They were really, really good.
Of course.
However, today, I may have 70 out of 100 make it to black belt. And I can tell you I have more than 4 that are just as good or better than these 4, right? A lot more than 4. But everybody's different. But I had this mentality that I had a standard of where you needed to be physically in order to get to a black belt in my school. And that's just not possible for everybody, nor is it why everybody joins martial arts, right? So, and Silverman said this best, we use Bruce Lee as an example. Right now, people can argue and whatever. If Quentin Tarantino is watching, he would say Bruce Lee was just a really good actor, maybe or something. But for the most part, we all think Bruce Lee and felt was a phenomenal martial artist, very fast, very well-rounded. Well, what if that's what you had to be a black belt? Like that was the standard. You can't be. how many black belts would you have?
Right.
Right. So that was my mentality back then. And it can't be that. It can't be that way.
No.
Or Tass wouldn't be a black belt. Tass wouldn't even be a yellow belt. Sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Okay.
Whatever makes you feel good.
Go ahead. I'm waiting.
I just know my green belt was harder than your green belt.
There you go. There it is.
But also, I mean, times have changed. I mean, you think about when you were a kid, right? You'd play outside, you'd do whatever, play basketball, do this, outside physical activities, and you go do martial arts 5 days a week. I know that's what it was for me. Today, with social media, we say it, right? And I don't want to like beat a dead horse with it, but there's so many more options and everybody wants to do everything because people have fear of missing out. The average student today trains 2 days a week for 40 minutes of class or 45 minutes of class. Well, crap, when I was a kid, I had a 4:30, 5:30, 6:30 class that I was doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 5 days a week. So the quality by default was just going to be better just because I put in more time. And I always say time is a great equalizer. And over time, you're going to see your second, third degree black belts. They're going to be amazing, amazing martial artists because they've got the time.
But we were the exception. And that's what people have to realize. Most kids, most adults, most people will burn out of anything when they're doing it every single day, especially kids as they transition from that 10, 11-year-old into 12, 13, 14-year-old. They burn out, especially if they were going every single day and they want to try something different, do something different. And then the problem with that is they feel if a student was coming on, because I did this, it was 1 monthly fee, come unlimited when I started, right? The problem is when baseball or something started and they say, we got to take a break from martial arts because we'd only be able to get here twice a week now, right? They put value on the quantity of days, not the quality of the training. And you don't want to get into where they feel like, if I can't come 5 days a week, then I got to quit. I'm not going to pay, right? It's not about the quantity. It's about the quality. So there it is.
That's right. Well, good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Yep. Thank you. We're the exception, sir. So, hey, thank you guys for joining in. And hey, next week, check out the Martial Arts Business Summit that we are doing. We may not have a Mets Task next week because we're doing a 3-day, 3 hours a day, free, by the way, summit with Mr. Shane Tassoul and myself, Chris Rodriguez, and Josh Arsamont. And that's next week, Martial Arts Business Summit. Now, somebody might ask, well, how do I get information on that? And I would say, I have no idea.
That's the cue for the MAIA team that's listening to maybe post something because we don't know.
It's out there somewhere. But again, it's 3 days, 3 hours, a Martial Arts Business Summit free next Wednesday. What is it? Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I think.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Thank you, Tass. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern time. 12 to 3 Eastern. Next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 3 hours a day. So join us for that, everybody. If you didn't,
by the way, there'll be like 30-minute snippets. So if you can watch, they're going to be in small doses. So it's not like you got to be locked in for 3 hours to watch it. So if you can pick up some of it, great. If not, if you want to watch it all, fantastic. But if not, like I said, it's cut up in short snippets that are bite-sized and easy for you to digest.
And by the way, congratulations to everybody watching this show because not even our MAIA team's watching.
That's true. Yeah, we got no love.
Or else they would have put up the link.
Right on.
Will it be recorded?
All right.
Hold on. Will it be recorded? Connor, will it be recorded? It will be. Business Summit. Huh?
Oh, the summit?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Oh, we don't think so. We don't think so. Yes, you can join late, of course. Yes. And I see disregard, so I'm going to disregard my answer on that. Anyway, thanks, guys. I hope to see you next week on the Business Summit, and we'll see everybody soon.
All right, everyone. Bye-bye, everybody.